Merci à tous d'être venus aussi nombreux ce soir. Je vais vous demander de penser à couper vos téléphones, si ce n'est déjà fait. Et on a le grand plaisir ce soir de recevoir un bon ami, Mike Guyer, donc du cabinet Gigon-Guyer, qui est venu nous retrouver ce soir pour faire une conférence. Alors Mike, bienvenue à Strasbourg. Tu viens de Paris, c'est un peu la course comme toujours. On ne s'est pas vu depuis une éternité. Et tu ne changes pas. Tu es un des... On a eu Xavier qui est venu il n'y a pas longtemps, Wilhelmian. C'est une très belle série cette année, je trouve. Et on est tous vraiment ravis de te recevoir ici. Ça fait des années que je t'invite et des années que tu ne viens pas. Donc je tenais à dire que finalement, débordé par le travail, je comprends cette activité incroyable. Et aujourd'hui, tu continues cette activité avec Annette sur ce bureau qui est à Zurich. Un bureau que tu as monté avec Annette Gigon en 89, déjà. Et qui a énormément de succès, puisqu'il y a de très nombreuses publications prestigieuses chez El Croquis, à Plusu, etc., pour quasiment tous vos projets qui sont publiés. Votre cabinet à Zurich, c'est environ 50 personnes, ce qui n'est pas rien. C'est-à-dire c'est un énorme travail de management aussi, tout en créant une qualité et un renouveau perpétuel dans vos projets, qui sont aussi bien dans le domaine de l'architecture publique que de l'architecture privée, sur des concours évidemment nationaux, suisses, mais énormément de concours à l'étranger aussi, en France aussi, avec le musée d'art concret de Monsartou, qui est sublime et que je te jalouse, comme beaucoup. De nombreux prix, des prix du RIBA, déjà dans les années 90, 2001, 2002, le Schumacher Prize, le Fellowship RIBA, donc des prix prestigieux internationaux qui reconnaissent une activité originale et exceptionnelle, une écriture qui est liée à, on dirait, un rationalisme très suisse, mais empreint d'une grande intelligence, en permanence renouvelée, autour de la question aussi des matériaux, de la lumière, de la couleur. C'est-à-dire, je trouve qu'il y a une dimension d'aventure dans votre travail qui va au-delà des conventions, on va dire, modernes établies, et qui crée une extrême sensibilité dans votre travail, aussi bien dans les projets horizontaux, plats, confinés, petits. Je pense au musée de Davos, qui est une merveille, le Kirchner Museum, que nous devrions tous aller visiter. Ce serait un beau voyage d'école, faire ces quelques musées, celui de l'extension du musée d'art moderne de Winterthur aussi, qui est exceptionnel, en réutilisant des matériaux industriels, etc. Bref, votre débauche d'énergie et d'invention n'a pas de limite, si ce n'est celle que vous développez aussi à travers une activité d'enseignant. Toi, depuis de nombreuses années, à Antwerpen, mais aussi aujourd'hui à Lausanne, et maintenant aujourd'hui avec Annette à Zurich. Donc voilà, ce soir, Mike nous fait une présentation de son travail, qui est une présentation générale, carte blanche, sur ce que tu veux nous montrer, ce que tu es en train de faire, ce que tu fais aussi avec tes étudiants. Et voilà, je vais te laisser la parole pour nous enchanter avec ce que tu fais, en précisant que si Mike comprend parfaitement bien le français, il s'exprimera en anglais, à moins que vous vous encouragiez, comme les champions de ski suisses dans les descentes. Donc hop, 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 et peut-être qu'il le fera en français. Non ?
Non, j'essaie. Non, je le fais en anglais. Mais tes questions sont parfaitement en français, c'est pas un problème. On peut éteindre les lumières ? Okay, I have brought a lot of slides with me, and it will be a kind of heavy wave of images, and I will go through it quite quickly, but I think it would be interesting then at the end to have a discussion and some critical comments maybe that we can deepen the discussions. I will show you the first building we were lucky to win in 90. All the buildings you will see now, from now on, we have won in, as competitions. We have already also now almost never the opportunity to get direct commissions. So it's a kind of a system which forces us to give a lot of energy, and still it's also a system to somehow keep the quality of sustainable good architecture. It was a small building. It was a museum of the famous painter Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, of the German Expressionism. It was in Davos. It's the, let's say, the biggest city at the height of about 1,800 meters. So it has 4 or 5 months. It has snow laying there. And the reason why the museum is there is that Kirchner has lived there. He was ill, he has tuberculosis, so he was there at the last decade of his life. He spent there painting. So what can you do? We were quite young, we were not yet 30 years old. What can you do as a kind of contribution for a small museum? You see, it was in the 90. In the 80s there were big museums built. You know them all as a kind of icons of the postmodernism. And there was a group of American but also Middle European artists who claim that they can have more valuable space for presenting their work. Not only contemporary work, but also old work, traditional work. So what we did is that we said we do 4 single set spaces in a dimension of 90 until 160 square meters. And in between there is a very distinguished, very informal space, the hallway which links these 4 spaces. You see it, it's there in between. Sometimes it's very narrow, sometimes it's quite wide. It's lower, of course, than the art spaces. The art spaces are very refined. They get light from another space, a light space from above, where the light is coming in from these vertical windows, going all along. It's about 3 meters high, with a width of about 7-8 meters. And it's quite important to have this relationship of a height of 5 meters, this 9 meters in the width, and this kind of light spaces up there. So there is also already now quite, let's say, 1 meter, 80 centimeters layers of snow, which is then creating these kind of spaces. White walls, wooden floors, changing exhibitions from the collection they have of Kirchner itself, but also of colleague artists of the same time, combined with contemporary artists, and as a contrast, the space in between. Really realized in pure concrete, 3-dimensional, and lighted by the doors of the exhibition spaces, but also of the windows. And what is interesting is that if you change from one space to the other, you all the time you go through this kind of intermediate space, this hallway. You have this kind of zoning, you have this foreground, middle ground, background, you have light spaces, darker spaces, individual enlightened spaces. So I think the museum lives from this kind of difference of these different enlightened zones. Outside, it's completely encladed with glass, and you have the frosted glass from the light spaces of the exhibition rooms. You have the windows of the hallway, as you see it here, but you have also glass, frosted glass, which you slightly can recognize the isolation behind, which gives, let's say, the whole a kind of entirety of a very reflecting, very light-sensible elevations, which is even more beautiful than you see now when everything is white, which is, let's say, about a third of the year the reality. Then we had the opportunity to do another museum, which is quite, let's say, a logical consequences of the Kirchner Museum. You see it here. It's not really in the mountains, but it's in a hilly part of the northern Switzerland. It has an interesting silhouette. You see it here. I guess you know it already. It has this zigzag-shaped silhouette. It has a kind of an envelope of stainless steel panels, shingles, which are in a way matte, but also quite interesting in how it takes the enlightening. And maybe next one. And you see the differences now that what we recognize, because it's also for a father and son artist, more local artists, with a kind of changing exhibition program with local contemporary artists. But it was clear that they cannot have the power of what they did in sculpture, in graphic, and in painting works, in these big rooms of 150, 200 square meters, but more like cabinet-like rooms. So these are 30, 25 until 55 square meters big rooms in a series of 2 rows. You see it with a middle wall which is hollow to have the technical facilities for the building, with an entry here, with a huge window, with a southern skylight, and all these spaces, they are little chapels of light. You see it in the next slide with the section. So it's an addition of little light chapels, and the smaller the room is, the lower is, let's say, the north-orientated shed light. And this gives the silhouette you saw before. The next one. So you see the space, and sometimes it's combined with side windows, that you have an orientation where you are, that when you're in the logical way of in the enfilade going from one to the next, and you see it's all the time that the diagonal positioned doors. Sometimes there are shortcuts, but I think the windows is an important issue to have just a kind of orientation points. We already tried this out in the museum. Georges explained the extension of the Contemporary Art Museum in Winterthur. The next one, that's the one you mentioned. Next one, Georges. That was again a step for us, because we started with this ideal spaces which became in a way more and more personal the longer we were busy with these small museums. This is for a collection of really contemporary art, abstract art, but also art of the 60s, 70s and 80s from Middle European artists. And it's the collection Albers Honecker. And it was given to this place in Moissart in the south of France under the condition that the state France will finance a museum. And we had the opportunity, the luck also to win this competition for this museum. It's within a wood with huge Mediterranean needle trees. It's quite dark, and it was in this small community which had a mayor, which belonged to the Green Party, which was really interested in sustainability. So he was against every tree which had to go away. So we had to really make a kind of almost vertical, poured invisible concrete, geometrized, kind like abstract vertical object. You see, it's a split level concept. The upper three parts are the museum spaces. The part you see here is a kind of public space here, then the library. And it's, maybe you go on, it's like a kind of a spiral. It's like a kind of a huge stair, where the podest of the stairs are in a way, in different sizes, in different heights, in different width, the exhibition spaces. The lighting is not from above, it's from the side. So you turn, you can go on maybe, that you see the ground floor. You turn around a kind of a central nucleus with the elevator in the middle, with the two doors, giving access to the different levels of the, which is changing from floor to floor, and with the open staircases going around. And here is the entrance. It's a kind of a bridge-like space, and then you go up like that. You go on like this, and up in this space with the height, with the most enlarged height. And sometimes it has an enlargement like here, and on the lower part there, and even another one there, and delivery on the really first floor for the delivery of the art transportations. The next one. So it's not anymore this kind of museum which is monumental, which is not much accepted by common people. It is, and it was also on the wish of Gottfried Honegger, this quite famous, well-known Swiss artist, that this museum should become more acceptable through its atmosphere of atelier spaces. So when you got in, or when you will get into this bridge space, and then you go up, you will have exhibition spaces in different tonality of light. You have the warm southern light, the light from the west part, from the cold blue like north light. So I think this is the enrichment of this museum. It's visible concrete outside. It has this very light. Go on, Josh. You see it here. You see the different sizes, the different also tonality of the light spaces. And outside it has this. No, next one. It has this strong color. So it's a visible concrete structure. It's quite, let's say, it's like a light within this dark Mediterranean wood, and it has these large plates of glass in these double-pane windows, which reflect the vegetation, and which gives this kind of movement with the shadowing, and again with the turning of the sun during the day. The next one, the next, and then we had the opportunity, the next one, to go on. That's now a bad, not very visible image, but to work on a museum which is not for art, but for given themes, like this one, which is a big area of archaeological field. An archaeological field which signifies an ancient battle where the first time the German tribes were winning over the Romans, the Roman legionnaires under the chief Varus. It's the famous Varus battle, and it's in fact, let's say, the beginning of the German national consciousness of the population. And of course, it's when we have won this, maybe the next one, when we have won this competition, I think the people, the directors, and also the advisory board, and also the population was quite glad that somebody from outside was coming to do this museum, because it was, of course, a kind of sometimes difficult theme, also from the Second World War, from the Nazi time, because this Varusschlacht was all the time in this kind of relation of also being misused. It was in the 19th century, it was very well described by Nietzsche and by other philosophers in a better or maybe worse way. You see, it has as a main focal point this really rough structure. It's an L-shaped building on 3 columns. On 3, they are not columns, they are a kind of spacious feet. And it is the museum in the horizontal part and a 50-meter high tower which visitors can climb up to see how, let's say, the topography really talk or tells the history of like this battle was functioning. And maybe you return, George, return again. So the red spot you see here is the museum. You enter there, and let's say half of the task was to, let's say, remodel the woods, to make openings, to reforest, widen some parts of the woods, that you can see that the German tribes hiding here were really fighting in the whole length of this part, which might even go 10 times longer than this area here, where the first findings were found. The Roman, let's say, columns coming along here. It was very rainy. It was very difficult in the conditions of the terrain, and in fact, the topography is going up like this, so it's a little bit hilly here. And in these times of, let's say, these Roman types, this was really a kind of swampland, really, let's say, quite difficult land. So we had, go on maybe for the next slide, the next one, we had, besides the building, here you see the stairs going up, you see that the whole metallization is done in steel. It's in the structure itself, it's steel painted, and in the whole cladding, it's really 2.5, 3 centimeter thick cortina panels, huge steel panels, which are oxidizing with the time and getting this beautiful reddish color in the sun and a little more darkened than in the rain. You go up, the next one, and again up at the height of these 50 meters, and you see and read the history of this topography, of this very specific landscaping, and the history of the battle. The next one. And then here you see these different stages of the material ironed, the rusty ones on the left side, on the right side. The whole cladding of the inside spaces of the museum is also steel in a very rough state. You see it still here with the kind of burning treatise with the you see there, and when you go on, it is in a way installed as a black box where really the whole attention of the visitor is focused on these small findings, which are as parts not very interesting, but of course enriched with stories, with explanations, with video installations, and so on. The next one. And the other part is the landscape. And there we work together with a landscape office, which we work a lot, also based in Zurich. And we have chosen different materializations, different forms for the different path systems. So this is the path system of the Romans, the next one. It has this kind of steel plates in the size of a human being, 2 meters height, about 60 centimeters in the width, and it has texts on it, texts from the Roman period, but also texts from people observing, commenting this event during the 16th, 17th, 18th century, and even ending then to texts from the, let's say, 19th and contemporary authors. And the next one, as an addition to this, it has also 3 instruments, spatial instruments, small pavilions, which we added not as a reference to the, let's say, to what was going on in the battle, but as a kind of media to perceive what I'm, as a visitor, as somebody from today, can think or look or see now the battle and rethink what my position will be. So this is the next one. This is a dark space where I entered, and there is a huge cylindric object, the camera oscura, where I have this battlefield, vice versa, on this kind of, it has a diameter of 1.20 meters in a very mysterious way. The next one, the second one, was a pavilion where you have a huge pipe, a hearing pipe, to reinforce the noises from outside, to the next one, to a very noise-absorbing space inside, and you can turn it, you can stick your head into it, and to, let's say, make the physical presence or the physical atmosphere of the endroit, no? More present. And the third one, which is at the very end of the parcours of the visitors, is this very rusty pavilion where you enter and you have, in the opposition to these slit openings, the next one, sure, a kind of a screen where the contemporary wars are with a very loud noise are reported to the visitors. So you were walking through this almost idyllic space. You were seeing the explanations. There is also a kind of a sunken historic a window where you see the, let's say, the landscape, how it was. And at the end, you have this heavy confrontation, which is going on now in the contemporary times, with the same conflicts and the same problems. The next ones. So, and another one, which is, you see, we are now almost in the middle of this 27 years of work we are doing now, is this museum here. It's an existing museum in Lucerne, in the middle of Switzerland, the Traffic Museum. And it is it was going on for almost 15 years. We won it in the 90s with a concept where we proposed, you see it in the diagrams on the right side, part for part, every usage, every department, slowly emptying the middle space to regenerate, let's say, the the status and also the division of the museum itself. The next one. It stopped then for a long while. We did some little buildings, some little interventions in the meantime, which again disappeared. There was a kind of a balloon installation we did together with the Expo 2002, an installation with a tower with two horizontal arms turning around it. But this now was the real commission, where the focus was on 3 points. It was the first one, maybe the most important one, is the empty space, the arena in the middle. And then you see this building on here, the entrance building, which is a kind of hybrid of different usages, and this hall of the car in the background. The next one, we were looking for, let's say, this is the entrance building. You see, let's say you enter here, you have here the restaurant part, you have the shop area, you have this. It's also a building which links parts to the left, to the right side, which links parts to the central area, but also to the buildings being a site adjacent to the central area. Then there is an exhibition on the first floor of digital worlds, of the television, of the communication systems and so on, in the Congress Center on the top. And next one, we were looking for a language of how we can communicate the content of these buildings to a very large set of people, because they have more than 500,000 of visitors a year. So it's the museum which has the most visitors in Switzerland. And we invented, or we created, this kind of let's say elevation which talks to the visitor looking at it, with all kinds of wheels. It's wheels from cars, from ships, from bicycles, whatever. And the next one. And it is, let's say, part of this kind of strange shape these buildings has, with large openings where you enter, large openings where you have a terrace with windows, the next one. And when you enter, you are coming into a space where, let's say, the exhibition on the first floor is really present as this kind of ongoing, very visually very strong presence of the digital world. The next one. And on the other side, as an opposite, there was the question, this demand of a house for the car, for the moving vehicle. The first proposal we made in the 90s, together with the first competition, was this kind of central hallway, structured, very simple structured hallway, which has these ramps encircling, and these ramps searching the neighboring buildings on different levels, which can give a kind of moving space for people, for visitors, but also for cars, for bicycles. And then, because the focus was more orientated to the entrance buildings, they just asked for a decorated jet for a car. So what we did, we made a simple hall. We made a kind of a mechanical storage space for the cars, for the collection of cars they have, which they could, together with sponsors, have different zones of with different themes. And we tried again with elevation parlante to have an elevation of the kind of compressed cars when they have to go, when they did their work. You know them, this kind of huge junkyards of these stapled, pressed forms of cars. And we wanted to put them as a kind of a vertical setting on the facade, as you see it there, as a kind of mirroring of what the beautiful arrangement of the cars in this kind of mechanical archive has in the interior. But of course, because there were sponsors like Audi, Mercedes, and Renault giving money to the people, they were not willing to go with us in this direction. So we had, the next one, we had to find another way. We were looking for this kind of this kind of world of, you know, also very well from the street, from the Grand Route, and the next one, it gave a kind of really nice, the children, they love it, kind of a decorated shed where parts sometimes try to fly away, to vanish away from the kind of a little bit dull box. And they also created as a didactic program a kind of a play to find a way to find panels which might not be correct because the signage or the let's say the reasoning is somehow not right written there. So that was, you see, we started with art museums and ended with this theme museum. There was quite a range of different expressions in architecture during 10 years. Then the next part, the next, let's say, parts, and we did this, the next one we did this parallelly, was really down to earth tasks, living in different standards. This was a competition we won for a community, for families which have at least 4 children. It's a kind of subsidized community by the city of Zurich. They founded it after the Second World War for families with a lot of children which had problems to have cheap homes. And the next one, it is a beautiful site. It is a protected park. And it allowed to put a building, a narrow building, along this very noisy street. North is on the top, and another one here. And the position of these 2 buildings in relation to the park, but also to the street and to the neighborhood, gave the typology, the next one, George, the typology of the apartments. You see now this typology of this apartment, which is having this noisy street here, and the park on this end with all the sleeping rooms and the kind of circuit around a central element with all the bathrooms, and an ongoing balcony with different depths which are orientated to the park. And that gives the next one this kind of interior space, this kind of, let's say, enlargement of spacious luxury in terms of having this circuit together with the outside balcony. And the next one, the other typology is building typology which is deeper, which is 15 meters in depth with a balcony 2 meters wide, which is a kind of almost quite an enlargement of the outside space, and which kitchens maybe sometimes being here, sometimes being here, also a kind of a circuit around the central part, but with an orientation which is more vital to both sides. The next one, you see it here, the next one. And it's subsidized apartments, and so the budget are quite low. You have to fulfill standards, also in terms of cost that you get the subventions. And what we added as the most valuable part is a very colorful facade we did together with an artist. The next one. We remarked in this time, it was, let's say, in 2001, 2002, that glass was quite cheap because of some reasons. In Middle Europe, let's say at the same price as another paneling. And so we could get, let's say, these panels of glass, and we tried to put it as a material to the elevation, but also as a kind of sliding element in the zone of the balconies. The next one. And some parts are transparent, some parts are opaque. And again, further on, short. With these kind of different levels, you get a very, because the people are themselves moving these panels, an apartment is going from here until there. It's quite long, and they, of course, they completely fill this with green carpets, with satellites, with flags from where half of the people are foreigners, so families with migrant backgrounds. So it's a kind of beautiful, very livable world. The next one, which is because, of course, the slides are taken very much in the beginning, which is much more richer than you see it here, and it is so-called directly in opposite to the green, to the vegetation of the park. The next one, another building which is still going on. That's this one in Geneva. It is also an interesting constellation in the terms that Geneva is like Zurich, really seeking for concepts to intensify the possibilities in the inner cities. So for some reasons, this part here was staying in the zone of 3-story high villas, and these other parts could be intensified under conditions that it has to be regulated in terms of how high will be the rent or how high will be the price when you will buy an apartment. And it was the next slide. It was the task to find an architectural language to combine all these different standards of high price apartments in the free level, the next ones, like these ones, which are, it's really a park with beautiful group of oak trees, and it was it's quite near the center of Geneva, and it was the aim of the two clients. They were private persons developing this this whole area to not have a presence of, let's say, streets, so that there is a very, I think, very intelligent, solved circulation system that you take the cars quite quick away underground to the different buildings, and that the buildings are more or less still within the green, and you walk through these kinds of, the next, maybe you see it, the next ones you see it there. This is the interior, the next one, together with the balcony and the loggia. And it has this kind of tradition of the luxurious, also for less expensive apartments, luxurious atmosphere of how you live in Geneva. And you have this contrast of the 3-story to the 8 until 12-story high buildings. And we could be successful to keep, let's say, the quality of these quite, these are poor prefabricated concrete elements constructed as a sandwich panels, which were already present when the building was going up, as the main constructing element. So it was through the quick process the buildings had that it was possible to adapt it not only for the 3-story high buildings, but also for this, let's say, these buildings, 12-story, 8 stories. The right one is an HLM, which Rolex bought for their collaborators. And it gives the next one. It gives a kind of an atmosphere because the trees are now recovering. We added a lot of other trees. It gives a very nice interference between vegetation and the building themselves. And the next one, and you see there, the buildings are really fat buildings. You see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 apartments, sometimes even 10 apartments per floor, to get to this density, let's say the society, the city wanted. The next one. You see it in section. The next one. And again, the quality of the space, of the outdoor space, kept through all the different standards of living units. The next. And the last one of the living project, residential project I will show you is this one, which is in the near Zurich, and which is also interesting because it was an old industrial area with ponds of water, and the owners gave the park and the ponds as a present to the population, to the city, under the condition that they could, on certain parts, implement some residential projects. And we did one, Herzog Dümmer did just one on adjacent to us, and 3, 4 other teams of architects are doing now the next ones. You see 2 buildings, quite big ones. The height of the building here is 28 meters. The next one. It is really layered, clearly layered in the horizontal parts between perforated, whitish concrete bands and wood-cladded elevations in the back. The next one. It has a quite interesting closeness between this row of beautiful trees, almost 35 meters high, to the building itself. It moves a little bit slow, lightly, and reinforced in the movement to the south. You see in the next picture. Together, also with sometimes living on the ground floor, but also having a lot of public usages like kindergartens, like a little coffee space, like a common community space, and above the different sized apartment units. The next one. You see the position of the 2 buildings. The next one, the typology. It was important that you have an orientation to both sides, to the pond, to the row of trees, to the south. The next one, you have these zigzag-shaped balconies with different depths, and the lower parts, which is very close to a beautiful river, which is accompanied by a kind of lower vegetation of a kind of river near trees. Next one. That's the lower building. The next one. A courtyard in between, with low buildings for bicycles and entrances, which give a kind of nice zoning of public space, semi-public space, and then coming to the private spaces of the living units. The next one, the next one. And then the next decade, that is now the decade we are working now, is the one finally we arrived in Zurich of the big projects. In 2000, in the 0 years, 2000 to 2011, 2012, Zurich had really a booming time. And we did this building here, the Prime Tower. It was for a long time the highest building in Switzerland. And we did another building here. And I would like now to show you these 2 buildings. The next one. The Prime Tower. You have to see that Zurich is quite a Calvinistic town. It is 500,000. It is not really a big town. It is quite wealthy. It has about 1.5 million if you count all the surroundings. And this part, it's Zurich West. It is maybe known to you, was the most dynamic zone of development in the last 10 years. And it was an industrial area, and it really transformed now quite quick in different beautiful, or in different, let's say, different used or different ensemble of buildings with different usages. At this, let's say, intersection point of the railway tracks and this bridge is this ensemble of the Prime Tower. The next one, you see, there are 4 buildings. This is the Prime Tower with an existing building we renovated, and an infrastructure building, and a long building which has the same dimension in the horizontal as the building, the tower in the height. These four parts formed this ensemble in a kind of triangle. The parcel, the ground form had. The next one. And here you see the development in the competition. It had this kind of very dull, let's say, form which gave the program. It's mainly offices with public programs on the ground floor, on the top floor. But they had very intelligent demands in terms of relationships between, let's say, the office spaces not being deeper than 9-10 meters. And so the kind of circular or square buildings, or so they had not enough surface to enlight the building in the depth. So you see, we had to look for forms where there is an enlargement of the elevation surface, and it ended up in this kind of free-angled form, which, in fact, in the sections gets bigger. So there are projections which enlarge the surface with the height. The next one. And you see this here. It's cladded with mirroring greenish elevation, which is quite nice because it let's say, depending from where you look at the building, it really gives the building, you can just go on, George, now. It gives the building all the time another presence in the city. Sometimes, because it's, you know, this tower is really on the deepest point of a value, and sometimes you see it from the hills, and then the building appears like a dark building, and sometimes, just stop now, and sometimes it reflects, if you are close to the building, it reflects the ceiling. And it has what I just told, that the square, the flute dimensions is increasing with the height. It has these projections, which relates to the height of the buildings which are adjacent to the tower, which is about 22, 25, 28. And it also gives quite an interesting dimension. Let's say a scale breaking dimension to, let's say, the surrounding, because the surrounding is built area, is built city, and the tower as a kind of abstract element, as you see here now, I think is although it's really in another material, materialized, it quite sets, is positioned and interconnects well with the neighborhood. The next one. And you see, it's not, the projects are not only present in the tower, but also on this other horizontal building. The next one. And the next one. And it's because it has this kind of glass facade on the new buildings, and this mineral materiality in the old building, and also in this other building you will see afterwards, with the white concrete, that's the inner courtyard space. It has an interesting, let's say, presence day and night. In the day, it has this kind of shimmering, reflecting presence, this kind of responding to the lightning atmosphere, to the neighborhood, to the sky. And in the night, it turns, because it gives then the structure, the inner structure of the building, which makes, let's say, the presence, the visual presence of the building itself. So this is now in between. That's the main entrance. The next one, that's the hallway, the entrance lobby, 12 meters high. The next one. And then you see it has a section, which is this one, quite narrow, and it has this other section where it appears almost like a slab. And the next one, you see it's this kind of octagon shape, which has this presence you saw before in the images, which is all the time changing from the different viewpoints you look at the building. If you are far away, if you are close to the building, it has really a big richness of how it stands there in its presence. The next one. And of course, it's an investment project. It's only offices. There are a lot of firms. There are about 25 firms in different sizing, renting these spaces as you see them now here. And you have, because it's open from the ground to the ceiling, it has this presence, viewing to the lake, but it also for the next, it has also this presence that you can almost see the building if you look outside through the elevation again to the next space. It has this kind of fore, middle and background through this reshaping of the floors. The next one. It has of course this entrance hall for big clients, lawyer associations. The next one, it has a restaurant area with a bar, with a bistro. We did about half of the fittings of the interior architecture of the tower. The other half did other architects. The next one. And what is also, I think, for the tower very important, that it is, although it's completely done in glass, very sustainable. It has one. The glass in itself is about 10 centimeters. It has 3.5 layers. And every second, every third panel, you can open in this way. You can open it under certain circumstances. It shouldn't be too hot, shouldn't be too cold, not too windy. But you can come in the morning and you can push a button and then it opens like this. And from outside, the next one, it looks like this one. If every panel is opened. The next one. So this, at the same time, we did this one. This is a building which is also, we were really fascinated by glass, curtain wall glass elevations in relationship to the, let's say, landscaped working spaces. And this one is for Würth. There was also more money, a higher budget. So we could do an elevation which is this double skin elevation, and we could, you see it here already, play with textile elements which are part of the outer glass and which give, because the panels of the glass are in different angles, which give it a kind of a beautiful shimmering envelope. Next one. It is really on the lake of Bodensee, on the north border of Switzerland to Germany. It's really beautiful. Next one. It is directly on the water with a little harbor. It is very horizontal. You see it has mainly 3 stories, and on some parts it goes up until 5-6 stories. The next one. It is a multi-use building with a big conference room, with restaurants, with a small museum. That's the green one. With a headquarter, that's all the blue spaces, a headquarter part, conference part, with a kind of laboratory part for the education of the people. It was the main, let's say, the main building for Middle Europe, mainly Switzerland, Austria, France, of the company Würth. Next one. The patron, still living, Mr. Würth, has a big affinity for art. So every building he's doing, and he really has created beautiful other buildings by other architects in Germany, but also in Belgium and in other towns of Switzerland, all the time in connection with art, and these art spaces are open, accessible to the public, also in the weekends. The next one, you see it here in the section, the entrance, this kind of roof coming out, being a shed then structure in the museum. The next one, as you see it here, the next one, with the pictures in it, the next one, and you see the next one. You see how this kind of curtain wall is really becoming now a curtain wall. The next one, together with the water and the light. The next. And this one we still are a little bit busy with, was, you see, was going on for more than 11, 12 years. It's in the middle of Zurich, in a completely built part. It's an industrial part. It's quite interesting because it's the last area in Zurich which is industrial, and the other half, it's this one, is still going on, and they just built a silo tower, 120 meters high, a new silo tower. And what we did, the next one, that was the existing buildings. We kept as much as possible of the existing buildings, which are quite nice. It's an old beer brewery, and added 3 parts, 3 new buildings, that's yellow parts, really intersecting and going together with the old buildings together. The next one, and you see it here, and it has, on this part, the white part, it's belonging to the art center, because the art museum, the Kunsthalle for contemporary art, the experimental art museum, was already there in the 90s, and the city was really interested to keep it, also with the galleries and the informal bar spaces. The tower you see in the back is a residential tower, and the red building is an office building. And it's, you see, it's the architecture of Feldschlösschen, of this company which produced beer in the 19th and 20th century, built with this kind of, we call it clinker, cladded with a kind with this kind of clinker, with the reddish and the yellow color, and we reinterpreted it again with this kind of ceramic tiles we had at the new building, at the residential and the office towers. This is white concrete, which is a kind of huge contemporary art spaces put on top. The next one, extended in the back with a kind of outdoor exhibition space, which serves also as a kind of big party space in the summer, which terraces here and on the top here. The next one, all the time in connection with the existing buildings. The next one, and it has this presence in the old rooms, in the old spaces. The next one, in the new spaces. And the next one, and again, these huge windows, 5 meters high, they're really important because it's so complex, the building, from commuting from new to old, again old to new, that you need these windows to orientate yourself, to see on which side you are. The next one. And then, let's say the developing part, the part which made it possible in terms of income, was these residential towers. It's 75 meters high. It's apartments, condos, which were sold. The next one. They are cladded in these ceramic tiles, which have an undulated, glossy surface, which is, I think, quite elegant, and which has this kind of very, in a way, very rigid grid of openings, but with different functions. The next one, because the surfaces is so
restricted. It's not more than 600 square meters. There are 4, 3, 2 apartments. Sometimes in the top there are maisonette apartments that we didn't have balconies. We have sometimes loggias, but the most owners which bought the buildings, they just really used every square meters of the space they could. And the next one, and so we developed, let's say, a window which is about 2 by 3 meters, which really moves on the ceiling as a whole part, and replaces, let's say, the function of a balcony. So it really opens in the summer. You can open these 2 parts. All the others have a kind of little openings on the vertical profiles of the windows. But this replaces, let's say, the lack of the balcony. The next one. Then the third building, the office building, the next one, which is cladded with this, with these reddish ceramic tiles. The next one, which has quite an interesting, in its glossiness, quite an interesting structure and also richness together with the windows, but also together with the matte surfaces of the existing buildings. The next one. And it's very close to industrial, still existing now renovated pieces of like the silo building or like the chimney here. The next one. And now I think it's interesting for you to know what in 2012 we started to teach. And I just experienced half an hour in the atelier of Georges. And I would like to show you what we do. Just that you, if you might be interested to come once for a semester or so as an exchange student to the ETH, it might be interesting. The next one. We try to focus every semester, Annette and I, we change semester for semester on one theme. So here it's structure and space. And we start because, the next one, because we are teaching with colleagues like Miroslav Schick from the Analoge Architektur with Herzog Dömeron from the city development section with Peter Merkley. So what we tried, we picked this kind of part of industrial area. Then we made the next one, a kind of a plan with different parts on existing buildings, aside of existing buildings, new plots. The next one, and we gave them, the students, we have about 55 students per semester, these kind of, buildings, we think they're really influenced by a really important structure, the structure giving, let's say, the atmosphere of the space to build big models. And you see, you just go on, George, the next one. You see these spaces of a building in Brazil by Mendes de la Rocha. You see a building in Italy by Libera and Musmeci. You see a building by OMA in Rotterdam. And you see the project of the students, that's now a student project. The next one, which is quite referring to these references they did in 1 week or 2, but still in their own way. The next one, with this kind of interior spaces. The next one, the second project of a student, a tower, a living tower with these boxes. The next one, which are really in this system he shows on the left side, gives a kind of static balance, which makes this kind of arrangement, which you see here in the model, possible. The next one, a kind of reference to the Stadskantor in Rotterdam of a female student, which is, I think, in the section. Next one, you see, and in the floors, quite interesting. The next one. And then these models, we work a lot with models. These models are about 1.50 meters high. We work a lot with them because it's, for the students, it's quite important that they really see how these let's say, spaces are functioning with the structural idea. And you see, the theme changes every time. So now I'm again in a semester, and we have, as a theme, we have not structure and space, but elevation and space. And again, we go back into history of the architecture. They do models or plans or research, and try to link somehow in a creative way to their own designs. That's a diploma work. We do also master works. You just go on. That's a restaurant in the mountains, the next one. Then we do seminar weeks, Tokyo, Kyoto, once, two times a year, the next one. And another part which is quite important for us is the research we do. That's a book which is now in print, coming out next month, about residential towers, which I would recommend you to buy because I think it's an interesting book. Next one. Yeah. You see, it's just what it's in a way the themes or the tasks or the interest in architectural areas we are interested, we directly transfer to the school, and we get a lot of inspiration back from the students. We can again take back then to the office. The next one. And now I show you quick what we are busy now, because it's maybe interesting for you. There are buildings under construction or almost under construction. That's a building here. It's really on a very important space. That's the Bahnhofstrasse. It's this building here. You just go on now, sure. Here, this one, together with the villa. And it's not a big building, but it's a building which is quite nice because it's in a double park. It has the most important hotel just adjacent as a neighbor. And it's, you see, it's this one here. And it's completely, as an envelope, it's completely thought in German, it's the material is called missing, brass in English. In French, it's a very, very valuable metal, which with, let's say, bronze, yeah, which becoming older gets more beautiful and more beautiful. The next one. So it's an office building which is quite regulated by the zoning laws. It is together with the villa. The villa is a gentleman's club, the next one. You see it here. It's a beautiful building. And we do the interior, but in a very English-like style, 19th century style. Distinguished gentleman's club, unfortunately without permission for women. The next one. You see it here in section. It's linked underground, the next one. And here you see the first ideas of the elevations, the next one. And how this, it's really a very, it is quite profiled. It has a tectonic, it has a depth of about 30 centimeters, but it's very thin constructed, and it has this kind of irregular grids where all the narrow parts are open and the other ones are fixed, with public usage on the ground floor, with a kind of public entry to the villa. We will start in a month to build it. The next one is this one. Why I was coming from Paris today. It's this École Centrale Supélec in Paris. It's this building here. It was quite an intense experience because it was the first time we did a competition in a public-private partnership constellation. I think that's for you, if you are finished as an architect, it's the reality, for sure in France. That means that you have to work very closely with a developer to develop a building, not only in architecture, but also in price and in usage and in a concept for how this building will getting old, what kind of flexibility it has. It is a plan, an urbanistic plan of OMA. They are building now this one, the next one. And the two buildings are quite closely linked. You see them here. This is the old building of Supélec. It's a fusion of Centrale, École Centrale et Supélec. And this fusion with a new vision made it possible that they can now have the subventions of building this new campus. It has these central halls, as you see them in the yellow, and it has these kind of really segmented parts, like little cities putting together and creating interior worlds. The next one. That's how it looks. Our building from outside, it's completely cladded with ceramic tiles. The next one. It has this kind of thinking of in universes. So let's say a corridor with offices of labors on both parts of the corridor is forbidden as a concept. It has to be much more progressively thought in intersections. The next one. You see that the different parts are really mixed. There is no kind of monogamic zoning, but all parts are present in every part. And in this kind of mixture, they try to create a kind of synergy which is very valuable for students, professors, but also researchers. The next one. And the school is very horizontal and present not only on the ground floor, on the rez-de-chaussée, but also on the platforms on the first and the second floor, through ramps, through stepped up huge stairs. The next one. And this kind, it's like the Kirchner Museum I showed you in the beginning, this kind of yellow big hall connects, or let's say is the heart, the main space which connects, which holds everything together. The next one. That's the interior. The next one. And it has everything. It has sport facilities. It has an auditorium. It has research platforms. It has offices, laboratories, salles d'enseignement in different sizes. It has student facilities. It's for 2,800 students. The next one. It has an interior. It has a courtyard as a kind of outside space, which you can go outside, which is like a part taken from the wood just beside it into this courtyard and being, really reinforced as a kind of wild piece of nature. The next one. Some parts of this patio, like trees, are also present in the hallway because it's no underground. They can just really grow in the natural earth. The next one. You see the section in the longitudinal parts. The next one. In the other parts, and you see how diverse this hallway develops, sneaks through this kind of horizontal big volume. The next one. Then you have the elevated parts of the platforms. The next one. And you see our 3 levels, the life, of course, being the most intensive on the rez-de-chaussée, but then becoming more private and more limited, but is still public. And if you enter the universe, you're really then in an office or in a laboratory or in a plateau projet. Next one. That's the elevation. It's a kind of tectonic research. We are now interested in having again the depth of about 40 centimeters and interweaving different grids with different colored ceramic tiles together. Up here, can you go back? Sure. Up here is a hotel of 110 rooms, which was part of the concept. We did this project we are doing this project with Bouygues, and they proposed that, and it's the link of the school to the outside. So let's say startups which are coming from the school, Centrale Supélec, and coming back with their people, they can stay here, they can use all the facilities, make common research programs, having talks, workshops. So I think it will be an important part of the whole concept. The next one. So you see here the different colors with the different surfaces, forming of the surfaces. The next one. And that's also a building, just to show you that that's now, I think maybe that will be the most interesting building, residential building we will do, or we are doing now. It's exactly in this will of doubling the intensity of the neighborhood aside, doubling the grade of the usage aside. It's you see, it's a kind of, maybe you show the next one. It's an interesting shape. It's an adding of 2, 4, 6, 8 volumes in different depths, in different lengths. And if you go on, George, you see that in the model you hardly can recognize the building itself, because it has some parts which are almost 70 meters high. Here it's 45, 48 meters high, but here it becomes 13 meters high. So it is a try that it has this vertical density, but it also quite integrates in these interior courtyard systems, which makes the quality of this neighborhood. The next one. The next one. And what is also important is that the ground floor is completely open, so you can go through it. There are different closed courtyards, half-open courtyards. They have different themes, and the public space is quite. So this is now the first 5 floors. The next one, and then it slowly becomes less. The next one, George, less, and it ends up in the 2 towers at the end. The building 1 and the building 8. The next one. And in the towers, the next one, we succeeded now to introduce, because it's, this kind of horizontal layering is a kind of dull with the time. If you build a lot of residential units, it's a kind of, you search also for a more richness in the space. And the next one, this is now, let's say, these are the apartments we can now build in the towers. So it's this kind of three levels, 3 floors, 1.5, twice 1.5 high living floors. And I think it's an important thing that you have these high spaces at the towers to also have, let's say, this kind of feeling of being high and looking down, and having this kind of feeling for the verticality. The next one. That's a sketch for the interior. The next one. Ceramic tiles again for the identification of the different units. The next one. And then the intense working, just go on, George, the intense working on what are now the elevations? What is now the language of the architecture? How is the building now speaking to us? 8 buildings on a, let's say, series of 13 until 68 meters high. And we have chosen now for a very tectonic treatment of the facade. And you see it here. It has now 60 centimeters of depth where the different layers play. And it will be quite, in a way, maybe the most classic building we will have done until now. Okay, and then now the last one, which is a kind of a beautiful sister of the Prime Tower. It's the next one. It's this one. An office tower, 80 meters high. The next one, you just go on. it's again, you see that these are the two railway tracks. This is going to the main airport. Here is the center to Zurich, and here all the trains are going to the north of the northern part of Switzerland, from Zurich to Germany. And it is, you know, we tried to get the people from this higher level, it's about 12 meters higher than the ground level here, through different entrances. You don't, let's go on, you don't see it. You see it here, you know, that you can enter here, but also there, and it gives this kind of public usage and public intensity of the Sockel part of the building itself. The next one. You see it here, huh? That's the entrance here. Half of the building is already, that's the regular floor plan. It also, again, increases in height. Huh? The floors are getting a little bit bigger with projections. The next one. And the elevations are done with textile laminated glass. The next one, you see it here. Huh? So we have this kind of in the thickness of the floor, we have this kind of opaque glass, and they will covered with textiles laminated between the glass in a very light golden tonality, in the very bronze tonality, and it will change from side facades to side facades, and it will change also. Can you go back? You see, it will change from here to there, and from there to there, and now you go on, and you see it then in the perspective. The next one, you see it also a little bit there. It will have a kind of like when you walk in a beautiful dress, and the dress is moving. It will go. The building will go with it, together with the light reflections. And again, it has this shaping, and if in the night it turns to the structure. You see? It's a little bit, it's the beautiful sister of the Prime Tower. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Merci Mike. Pardon. Merci Mike. Bah écoute, magnifique. Je crois qu'on a... Il y a beaucoup de choses à dire, mais ce qui est réellement impressionnant, c'est comment en moins de 15 ans, vous êtes passé d'une sorte de laboratoire de formes, à la fois un répertoire très connu, celui de l'architecture moderne, et comment à partir de ce répertoire retravaillé incessamment avec beaucoup d'inventions, vous êtes passé à une échelle complètement incroyable. C'est-à-dire que vous êtes passé d'un bureau, j'ai envie de dire presque laborieux, à un grand cabinet international avec des réalisations magnifiques, tout en gardant cet esprit du détail, cette idée que tu développes ici avec la qualité du bronze, les nuances légères qu'on sentait déjà à Mouansartou dans l'idée de ce double glazing qui permet d'avoir des reflets, des ondes, des vibrations, et de le retrouver, cette délicatesse, cette sensibilité, cette intelligence à une échelle qui est celle de la métropole avec des tours. Je pense que c'est un exercice extrêmement difficile, extrêmement intéressant, parce que il est facile de tomber aussi à cette échelle-là dans la production, j'ai envie de dire, internationale classique, des bureaux d'études et d'architectes classiques qui choisissent dans les catalogues des systèmes éprouvés et garantis. Là, cette recherche permanente, je trouve, voilà, c'est cette sensibilité, cette subtilité que vous mettez en œuvre en permanence et qui fait que ce sont des projets qui vous sont propres, même si nous sont familiers parce que on a des sensations de déjà-vu, cette idée d'un travail de série qu'on connaît, et en même temps il y a toujours une approche, une sensibilité qui renouvelle complètement la silhouette de la ville, la silhouette de la tour, les photos avec les reflets de l'environnement au sol, en bas. Ici, maintenant, la richesse de la question aussi du socle, la façon dont tout ça va se retravailler, la prolongation de l'espace public. Dans le projet précédent aussi, cette richesse de cette porosité des rez-de-chaussée qui viennent un peu comme un snake, comme ça, dans un système qui semble déjà presque hyper dense, et où finalement vous apportez encore, avec une architectonique extrêmement lisible, simple, évidente, j'ai envie de dire sobre mais pas ennuyeuse, une qualité d'espace et une poésie que je trouve tout à fait remarquable. Donc je me souviens avec émotion, pendant que tu parlais, je me souvenais du travail laborieux, difficile sur le panopticon, sur lequel tu avais entre autres beaucoup travaillé à Rotterdam, et de pas mal d'aventures partagées, et je trouve que c'est un chemin parcouru qui est absolument magnifique. Je t'en félicite, je te remercie aussi de cet appel du pied que tu fais à nos étudiants et à des partenariats avec l'ETH de Zurich, puisque nous sommes voisins. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions à la fois voilà, sur cette aventure, sur...
Thank you very much for your conference. And I was interested when you talked about your agency working at an own language. And I was wondering, with the use of materials and ornamentation throughout your career, there has been a certain revisiting of themes known in brutalism, such as found. Do the ornaments you use, for example, in Lucerne, come as elements that you have found, and how are they always reworked, and in what objective? And I was also wondering, is it mainly in the project of Lucerne, is there a working around the idea of wit that was developed during the 80s by Robert Venturi? And is there an attempt at redefining wit or humor in certain of your buildings? Thank you.
Okay. You see, Lucerne is in the way, and it's clearly linked to Venturi. It's the kind of building or box-like building which talks to you, not by, let's say, tectonic Middle European referenced architecture, but by a sign or an object. And it's in a way a single work in our row of projects we did. But I think because it was quite obvious to do it in this way, because of what we had as a task, what we had as a content. But we try to... we are really interested in ornamentation, and we're really interested in getting emotion of the people visiting or living in the building. And but we haven't a lot of trust in, let's say, in a method of analogy like some of our colleagues are doing it very strongly, in taking more or less directly pieces of ornamental decorated architecture into the presence, and then you have, let's say, buildings which have undulated stuccoed facades, or which if you are far away, you think it's 50, 80 years, 100 years old, and if you come back and you knock on it, or you see that it's somehow fake. So that is also what we try to communicate to our students, which I think is, we are now old enough that we work another 15 years maybe, but for you, I think it's an incredible demand, or an incredible task how you deal with this, because you are so well trained in images we were talking. You were talking to a student. He had some A3 sheets of a kind of mixtures of his own project with other references. And George was asking him, where are these references from? And he didn't know, and he didn't care to know, you know. So we can re-insist that he has to know, but maybe the insistence is you are just used to work like this, but you have to search for a way that it still stays in a kind of trustful, or it contains a certain truth. It contains a certain inner spirit, because I think that it needs. Because there is another tendency in Switzerland, especially of the younger generation, younger than I am or Annette is, which are really forcing this. They are not anymore interested in referential architecture. They are interested in an architecture of archaic truth. You know, like Olgiati and the whole line carrots of this group of people. So we had in the 90s and also in the 2000 and 2010 a lot of collaboration with artists. I didn't show now so much of these colored buildings, but this was for some time, for some period, it was a very good method, because it's color. It's just quite cheap to adapt. A client would never talk about color in terms of cost, to use it as you want. And you can go really quite far to provoke or to create emotion or emotional spaces. I don't know, we did an auditorium for 650 seats, about double the size as this one, and it's really very colorful. It's also underneath, and it's like a kind of, it's like an LSD trip in a way, and it is very beloved by the students. It's,
Bonne soirée à tous.